Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my July wrap-up. I will try to remember to link part 1 below. I took part in the plus size readathon for the rest of the month and I have 3 more reads for that. One was Backstage Benefits, which didn't particularly fulfill any prompts, except it doubled up for Love Has No Scale, which is to have a plus size rep with a romance involved. And this is a novella length romance, 200 pages, about a YouTuber, which is always fun, who partners up with a TV producer to create a new TV show that is all about helping people to love themselves, especially if they are fat or black, as the main character is, as that has kind of been the theme of her channel and what she has grown it based on. This was fairly good. It wasn't amazing, but it was fairly sweet. Both characters had background issues where they had had difficulties with previous relationships. They are both, I think, in their 40s, so that was kind of nice to see as well. People who are a little bit older than the usual romance protagonists. I also liked the business side of things and the projects that they worked on together. Oh, and I'm going to be leaving out authors' names except for the books that have like a one-word, except for those that have a one-word title so that you could more easily find the book that I'm talking about. It's a little hot, so I might fan myself intermittently. A little hot. It's super hot where I am right now outside. The air conditioning is mostly keeping up with it. But anyway, another book for this readathon is Muscles and Monsters, which fits Bad Vibes Don't Go With the Outfit, because if werewolves counts as a trope, there are werewolves in this book. There are also other monsters, mythological creature type things, paranormal creatures, and some mythological creatures. There's a griffin who's like humanoid, which that's one I don't think I've seen before. This one isn't totally my thing in the werewolf area because the werewolf is always in a kind of humanoid body. One might call him a furry type of a body, whereas I prefer people who start out in a humanoid shape and then people who start out in a human shape and then turn into an actual wolf, or if not that, who are human and then turn into the humanoid wolf-like thing. But this guy is that way all the time. Also, I've read several other monster romances in this month, which I'll talk about more in a little bit, but I discovered some things, some tropes that I didn't know existed, and I'm not really that thrilled to know that they exist. There was a trope in this one that was constant across this and 2 other of the monster romances I've been reading, so that was interesting to know that, like, and these were all by different authors, so apparently it's quite a common thing if you read monster romances. This is about a wolven who runs a fitness gym falling in love with a fat woman who is a bakery owner, and he helps her pick up a mess of a cake that she dropped on the ground in between their 2 businesses because they're down the street from each other, and things kick off from there. And it's a very fast romance, and it's mostly focused on the erotic rather than the emotional development, but there were a few things about the wolf character getting over his past relationship and his problems with that, and being healed by talking things through with this new relationship, so I liked how that was handled. Also, I bought KU, and so one of the reasons that I'm reading a bunch of monster romances is that there are a bunch of monster romances on KU, and there were also several of them that fit the plus size readathon. But this was one of those. And I meant to only get it for 1 month because usually I stock up on enough books that I can read them all in a month on KU and then be done with it, and that's the best way to use it monetarily, but it wouldn't let me do that. It would only let me do it for 3 months, so I probably won't do it again for a while, but I'm going to read a ton of KU books for the next into October, so look forward to that. Several of them have been quite good, but several of them have been fairly trashy, and I did DNF some, which I will tell you about momentarily. But Backstage Benefits I give 4 stars, and Muscles and Monsters I gave, I think, 3 stars. Then for the prompt Acceptance in All Forms, which is to read a trope that you don't usually read, I read Deceived by the Gargoyles, which is another KU fat rep monster romance. And this has the reverse harem trope, which it's kind of reverse harem in that there are 3 guys and 1 lady character, and it's also a polyamorous relationship, so it has that representation, and there are multiple individual relationships, and then they all have a relationship as the 4 of them. So and it explores those different dynamics between the different characters, so I like that aspect. I had a favorite, one of the Gargoyles, Alistair. He was very silent but still very emotional. He doesn't know how to talk about his feelings, but he has a lot of feelings, and I enjoy that a lot. And this had an outward conflict with a character who was stalking the main character, so that got to be the main conflict, and we didn't have to have a 3rd act breakup, so I enjoyed that as well. So those are all the books I read for the plus size readathon. I also read Given by Nandy Taylor on KU, and this is one that I DNF'd at 25%. It was 100 pages in. I had heard it recommended. That booktuber talked about how the hero character grew as the book went on, but a lot of his growth is in the area of ceasing to be a sexist and a jerk, and like a little character growth is nice, but when he starts out as a totally unlikable character, I don't really care for stories where the heroine has to basically fix the hero by not putting up with his crap. And the only reason that he cares enough to change for her is because he wants a romantic relationship with her, whereas I think he should have learned to treat people decently for reasons other than that earlier on in his life. And he does have a sad backstory, but it just wasn't enough to make me care about him or think that he was at all good enough for the heroine character, who we start off with a lot more background information about, and who is much more likable. She's a warrior, she is a magic user, and she goes to this magic school in a country that's not her own to try to fulfill a sort of quest for the, I believe, deities of her home country, so that they will grant her request to heal her father. So it's kind of convoluted, but a really cool motivation. Whereas his motivation is just, it's another of those fated mate things. He smells her and it clicks, he's supposed to be with her forever, and he is not very respectful of the fact that she's not impressed by this whole mating thing, and doesn't think you can just have an instant relationship like that. So I decided to DNF that one, and I think gave it 2 stars. I don't always rate DNFs, but if I get 100 pages in, and I have enough like feelings about it, I will go ahead and do a review and write it out. Otherwise, if it just if I quit earlier than that because it just didn't grab me or something, or it turned out not to be what I was expecting, I'll usually just not review it or rate it. Okay, then in the same video that I heard about Given in, I heard about That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, and That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion and a Werewolf, and Mistletoe. Or at least I heard about Mistletoe in that video, and I had heard about the other 2 by the same author sometime recently. Let's review them in the order that I read them in, because I read them completely out of order. I read Mistletoe first, which is a short story about a woman who goes to a fox magical creature who transforms and asks him to take the curse off of the metal that her father has been using to make swords, that makes the swords and such talk. Then the curse is on the metal because the blacksmith stole the metal from this fox. So she goes to try and get him to undo it so that her father can make money again, because nobody wants to buy these talking things. And there is a talking sword who is a character, and I really like the sword's character, and I also really enjoyed these two main characters. And it's a fake relationship trope, and it's pretty cute and quite silly, but pleasant enough, so I decided to go ahead and read the werewolf one, which is the second. That was a short story that's set kind of between those two, between the two main stories, and the two main stories are novella length. And so this one was another fated mates story, because he's a werewolf and he sees her and knows they're supposed to be together. And the love story that happened wasn't that convincing, but it wasn't too bad. It was medium enjoyable. I just remembered I forgot to give more stars out. 5 stars to the gargoyle one, 4 stars to Missile Foe. This one, I think 3 stars. I enjoyed the world building quite a bit, and I enjoyed the side characters a lot. I actually enjoyed the side characters more than the main characters, which is one of the reasons I decided to go back and read the first book, which has the main characters there are the side characters in the second book, and vice versa. And this one had a lot more plot and a lot more world building, and I really liked it a lot. And also I felt the romance was a bit more convincing, and has some more about how the magical shifter with horns, who is the hero for that story, longs to be in a family, and he sees that the heroine has this really loving family and he kind of wants to be a part of it. And I really thought that was really sweet, and I really like the revolution style plot that we have, and all the magic and stuff, so that was a lot of fun. I think I gave that one 5 stars. And those were all on KU. And then Sin and Spell is another romance that was on KU. That's another monster romance, and this one I heard about from Ellie. Kind of. She read the previous book in the series. There's 2 books total, I think, so far by this author in the series, and said it was a monster romance, and the one that she read was a Mothman romance, and I find moths incredibly off-putting, so I thought I probably wouldn't like a Mothman romance. So I read the second one, which is a incubus romance. This one was really sweet. It is kind of about the incubus has sex because it kind of feeds him and gives him energy, and so he enters into contracts with humans to bring them pleasure which feeds him, but he always keeps his emotions separate from that. And so it's kind of about our main character, our heroine, who owns a bakery slash coffee shop, entering into a contract with him where he also gives her money to buy her the place she's renting out, because otherwise it'll be sold out from under her. He also kind of gives her a whole fake relationship to enjoy, like he takes her out to fancy parties, is really sweet with her, and kind of accidentally forms feelings. Well, she also accidentally forms feelings, and it's quite sweet. Then Lady of the Mark, I think I heard about this one from Reads with Rachel, and this one, it says at the beginning that it is dark, and that the good characters do a lot of bad things, and that bad things happen to the good characters, and it was quite good with its trigger warnings. So because I knew all of what was going to happen, I was able to skip parts when I could tell that kind of thing was going to happen, and I was able to put up an emotional wall between myself and the book, which I prefer not to do because it means I can't enjoy the book as much as I would like, but it does mean that I can experience the story without getting emotionally wrecked by it. So if something bad happens, with those guards in place and with skipping the bad parts, I was able to enjoy this a fair amount. It has some big plot holes, like the setup of the society, and the whole plot is that a bad guy has separated the city down the middle where a river is, and he separated basically the poor working half from the rich not working half. Like that was supposed to like hurt the working half but not the non-working half, but that's not how economy works. The wealthy people have to be able to exploit the working people in order for them to still be wealthy. So it was a bit silly in that area, but there's a lot of being revolutionary type stuff, secrets and spies and undercover work, and really cool invented weapons, and an age gap romance, which I don't really like, so I basically just pretended that they were closer to the same age, which wasn't difficult because the heroine acted fairly old for her age. I know that trauma can kind of do that, and she had been through trauma, but usually people who seem old for their age because of trauma are actually very emotionally, have a lot of emotional problems, and she really didn't. So there are a few problems with characterization, and at some points her love interest really irritated me. But there is a sweet kid involved who they rescue from the bad guys. There's a whole secret society who works together to try to overthrow the bad guys, and that part was all pretty cool. I gave Lady of the Mark 4 stars. Then we have some audiobooks. All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a memoir about a gay man and how he grew up, and how being at the intersection of being gay and black had various effects on him, and how he was raised, and there was a lot about his family and how much they meant to him, and several of the chapters were like letters written to family members, and those were really cool. There were some really sad and dark parts, but also a lot of really uplifting and sweet parts. I highly recommend it, but do read trigger warnings for that, and like you might want to skip certain chapters. 5 stars, I think. I almost always give memoirs 5 stars unless they were like super badly written or something. Boss Witch, which is I read because it has witch in the title, and I like witchy books. This is a romance that is fairly slow. I think it's like a 10 or 11 hour audiobook. It was fairly sweet. It's about a witch and a witch hunter, and the witch hunter coming to realize that witch hunting is actually really bad. I felt the ending was a little too optimistic and unrealistic, as far as how the society handled the witch hunters. The romance was very sweet, and the relationships between this witch and the rest of her coven was very sweet, and I liked how she would not put up with her toxic grandma, and had and like teamed up with the rest of her family to stop letting her grandma be mean to them. So I gave Boss Witch 4 stars. Then Who is Wellness For? Another audiobook that I think I found in the memoir section of my library's catalog. This is about the author's life growing up, I think in America as a, I think, second generation immigrant from the South Asia, Bangladesh, I think, and being Muslim, and also she had an abusive mother, and a father who didn't really do anything about it, and she talks about that a lot, and how it gave her issues with her body, and it's and she used that to start a conversation about wellness, and how wellness has been turned into a capitalistic thing, when it should be a very socialist thing about taking care of everyone and everyone's health, and how you can't have a healthy nation or world if everybody isn't healthy and taken care of. And about how things like yoga and other wellness practices have been appropriated without giving respect to the actual traditions they come from and totally twisting them around so they're not what they're supposed to be. How wellness has a spiritual aspect, and when you take away all the spiritualness and pretend it's just secular, it does not have the same effect. And pretending that people who came up with theories on wellness were not religious people is wrong. Yeah, it was just, there were lots and lots of subtopics and points covered that were really interesting, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, now some physical books. First, Mechanics of Love by Mika James, because I looked on Goodreads and there are lots of books titled Mechanics of Love. This is about a lady mechanic, which I love lady mechanics. I'm not sure where I heard about this, but it's an indie book. Falling in love with a doctor. So they're both professional people, and the mechanic still lives in her hometown where the doctor is also from, and the doctor comes back to her hometown after being away for a long time, after catching her husband cheating and deciding to get a divorce, and wanting to come home and kind of heal after that. And they have a love story, and they have to unpack how they felt about each other when they were teenagers, which was a bit contentious. And I gave Mechanics of Love 4 stars. The Ghost of Rose Hill, which I heard about from Kara, Wild Book Garden. This is about a Latina Jewish girl who goes to Rose Hill, which is in Prague, to stay with her aunt for a summer because her parents are sending her away from her friends and her violin because they think she's been spending too much time with her friends and violin. They are also musical friends. And not enough time studying because her grades aren't great. And being a violinist won't make any money, so they want her to focus on figuring out what career she wants and studying for, I think, the SATs. Instead of playing violin all summer. So she goes, and she doesn't really study much, but she doesn't have a violin to play, so she climbs the hill next to her aunt's house and finds an old Jewish cemetery, and she starts cleaning it up because it's all overgrown, and she meets a ghost there and makes friends with him, and it's really sweet. She also meets a really creepy guy in town called the Wasserman, and this is told in verse, and it's very prettily told, and there are like different sections. What are they called? Like interludes and refrains and stuff like that. So it's kind of like it's a song, which connects to her being a violinist, and the Wasserman gives her a violin, and she kind of obsessively plays it when she gets it, and so there's that kind of creepy thing going on. And then there's these ghosts. She meets a couple other ghosts, and it's really interesting, and I like how she stands up to her parents, and I like the friendship she makes. The ghost she meets is so sweet, and I gave The Ghost of Rose Hill 5 stars. That actually went pretty quick for 14 books, but there were quite a few novellas in here, so I didn't have to talk about them for very long. I'd love to know if you've read any of these or are planning on reading any of them, and is there anything you're looking forward to reading in August? That's the next month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!